Okay, now you want to give me,
We're gonna open up for a hearing for the fiscal year 20 proposed budget.
I think everybody has a copy of it. If you want to take it item by item, you want to,
We're doing the hearing right now, if anybody's got anything to say.
okay.
I'd like to speak.
Yes, sir.
Thank you,
Let's,
Chief.
let's get to,
I will be.
we still don't.
Yes. I think most of you guys already know me. I appreciate you letting me speak. Gary Venable, 2021 Broad Street. Just a few things that as I was looking over your budget from 2019 to 2020, I think some of the issues, at least from a citizen standpoint, is that it's not very detailed in some of the line items. And what I mean by that is just looking over your utility fund for your revenues, there's some questions there that unless you have some more specific information, it's hard to follow. And an example of that is your line item for water bill. In 2019, you have $937,125 budgeted. And I'm assuming this is a proposed budget and not end of year budget or actual revenue that was coming in.
Those are just proposed.
Okay, so you can't really compare truthfully what you have coming in or what your expenditures are from the previous year because you're dealing with a 2019 proposed budget. You're not dealing with actual numbers, what's actually spent or what's actually brought in as a revenue. And because of that, you truly don't know without seeing it what you need to budget for the next fiscal year. And the example again of what I'm talking about is if you go back to the water bill at $937,125, and if you look at the requested amount of $800,000, which was increased $100,000 on May 29th, it doesn't make sense to a citizen to have a decrease of revenue of $137,125. At the same time, you have a 5% increase scheduled for 7/1/19. So the issue there is that without more detail and seeing the real world revenues that are coming in, it's very difficult for us to understand where that money is, where that money is spent. Additionally, there's some other line items there that probably could use a little more detail as well. One example is the software for the City Hall administration. And I speak of that because, as you know, that's kind of my area of my profession. But we have $20,000 budgeted as an expenditure. And again, there's no information there that says, okay, we actually spent $20,000 for 2019. $20,000 for software, I'm assuming is annual support or licensing agreement or technology support, that sort of thing. But yet it was budgeted $20,000 last year and again this year. And if that's the case, that seems like an awful high number without having a breakdown. Is it multiple pieces of software that you're paying for? Do we have, are you paying for Harris? Are you also paying for your SCADA system out of that and that sort of thing? And then,
I'm in complete agreement with Mr. Venable here. In zero balance budgeting, you take the amount that you used in a category, and it's an exact amount. It's not all of these numbers that Maya is providing us here in 4, 3, or 4 zeros, which tells me that we're not using the Smart Fusion software to provide us the data we need to do a budget in every single one of these categories for revenue and expenditures. So my question, I guess, or a question on the table is where are we getting the data for this budget if we're not using what we actually spend?
This is the software line item is for the maintenance agreement that we have to pay every year. And it rounds up 19,000 something. So, I mean, an estimated budget is an estimated budget. And it is a bit over the 19,000 to cover it.
I'm in agreement with the estimation. What I'm not in agreement with is the column that we have here in the budget should be what we spent last year, not an estimation.
Well,
Do
if
we
going
not have that?
forward, you guys
Do we
want
not have
that.
that data available to us? The software we're paying for, Smart Fusion, provides incredible amount of accounting data to us that we need. And we need to be using it, and we're not. And because we're not, it begs the question that Mr. Venable is, what are we doing? How did we even get here? I can add up, 50 columns and come up with $1.5 million and sell it to anybody if that's what we're doing. But I have an issue with that.
Well, going forward, if you guys want the real numbers, we can provide that, but this is how all budgets have been done. With
This
the
is the
previous
standard.
estimated budget versus the new estimated budget. It's not the actual budget. If you guys want the actual budget, we can do that going forward.
I just know in the past, and ladies, in my experience, when I worked in local government, and I had to present a budget for technology, and when I had to present it, I had to give my board actual expenditures from the previous year and any revenues that came in, and then that could kind of justify my requested amount, because in my proposed budget from the previous year, sometimes I didn't spend all of it. Sometimes I didn't meet revenues, that were projected. So they couldn't make a really true and informed decision based upon what the proposed budget was from the previous year. And the last thing that I would like to suggest is that we have salaries lumped into one lump sum for the departments. And, just looking at some of these, I'm really not trying to beat anybody up, I'm not, but trying to wrap my head around some of the salaries, it says that some of them were split, amongst other departments, but then if you take, I'm assuming split is 50%, I don't know, because it doesn't say on here, but if you take it and split it in half, and then even add a 3% raise increase, it doesn't add up to what was previous from the 2019. So those are just a couple of items I wanted to address with you guys. I appreciate you letting me talk.
Thanks, Gary. This used to be spelled out for us. It used to be more transparent than it is now.
This is the same as it was last year. Good evening. Okay?
Can we move on?
Okay.
I've got something to say if there's nobody else.
Let's move on, I'm sorry.
This is a public hearing.
No, it's not a public hearing.
I believe it's the public hearing.
Pardon?
It's a budget hearing.
You announced public hearing a moment ago. That's what's on the agenda.
I said it's a budget hearing.
Okay. So the few things that I wanted to bring up.
Just a minute. Let's make sure it's okay.
It's a budget hearing. It's a budget hearing.
Yeah, go ahead. Oh, okay, we're talking about the budget, right?
Yes, I'm talking about the budget, the same as the person before me was allowed to speak.
Okay, come on up front, give your name, do the routine.
My name's Catherine Corcoran, my address.
This is budget hearing, not public hearing.
Is that correct, Tom?
It's the public hearing for the budget.
No,
No,
It's what was listed on the agenda.
no, it doesn't say public hearing on here at all.
So you're planning to not have a public hearing, is that correct?
There's a public hearing.
It's a hearing.
Mayor
on the
Bridges.
It's a requirement of the Budget Act, so you might want to have
I'll
one.
let lawyer tell us which direction we need to go.
She can address the council if it's about the budget. It's a hearing on the budget.
Oh,
Whether you want
so
to
it
call
is
it
a
a hearing
public.
or a public, it's a hearing.
Okay, go ahead.
It's astounding. Okay. Yeah, that astounds me. So one of the things that I'd like to bring up is last time you were talking about a tremendous amount of excess money in your budget, and you talked about putting money toward repairing roads and so forth, and sidewalks were bundled in with that. However, you, Mr. Jackson, specifically said that most of that money, or all, that went for the budget for sidewalks and roads would be put toward roads. There was no mention of any addition of sidewalks, which have been needed for a long time. And I was surprised to, actually for the last few years, have not heard anything, especially from you, Ms. Thrasher, considering that the community that you live in needs sidewalks. And they count on you to submit that to the council in order to have that put in the budget. Specifically on 8th Street, which is something that Mr. McCormick addressed in his election. So I would suggest maybe adding some money to put in sidewalks on 8th Street, because the police department in this city has in the past arrested people for walking in the street in that area where there are no sidewalks. So along with that, you know, again, in compliance with the Budget Act, the city has to have both a completed audit and a budget that complies with the Georgia Budget Act in order to receive grants. Now, this particular meeting, again, sorry to have to say it, is held in violation of the law, because the, the ad that was put in the newspaper was not an ad for a year-ending 2020 budget. And I advised your city clerks of that a few times. No correction was made whatsoever. But there are some Simon Says rules that have to be completed and in a specific order according to the Georgia Budget Act to have a budget that complies with Georgia law. So again, this year, your auditors may as well take their sweet time in getting your audits done, because this year, yet again, you have not complied with the Georgia Budget Act. And that's all I have to say.